Afternoon, friends. It's your boy Moog. This is Wake Up Wyoming here at Wake Up News for January 17th, 2018. Wow, the time flies. We're joined again by Seth Lyon, the one and only Seth Lyon. If you're not familiar with his work, he's been on the show once before. His wife, lovely wife, Irene, twice before, talking about things that don't really make the mainstream media, topics that I'm not super familiar with, but I keep an open mind to. And of course, trauma and healing. Seth and Irene, both healers based out of Vancouver, BC. Seth, thank you so much for being back on the show. What's up?
My pleasure to be here, Max. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Nice to be back.
It's great to have you back. And I understand you and Irene and your son just got back from a trip to the Philippines, right?
Yes, that was amazing. We were actually over there over the holidays, and just a whole different world over there. We got to see a whole bunch of stuff. We were in Hong Kong, then we were in the Philippines. We were in both sort of the worst of it and the best of it. I mean, on different levels, but I mean, Manila, which is polluted and insanely crowded and kind of terrible. And then we were in like a dive resort, which was like tropical paradise, and everything in between. Whenever I go to the Philippines, the main thing that hits me, no matter where I am, is the people are so different than what we're used to. Just with the realities they live with, there's a different kind of resilience in their spirit, a different kind of openness, even with the kids. And so it's always heartwarming and sad and rich experience going over there.
Yeah, it is overwhelming. I know from my experience traveling to countries where, either there's a lot of pollution or a lot of poverty or the extreme wealth disparity. It's a good reminder of why we fight for, equal rights, equality in the sense of equal opportunity for people in all over the world, but especially in the places where we live within our sphere of influence. And that's one thing we're talking about today with you, Seth.
Yes.
I mentioned it earlier. We could get into it over at your website. Like I said, Seth talks about things that don't really make the mainstream too often. Although some of the topics Seth addresses did make the mainstream recently, with disclosure about extraterrestrial or interdimensional life making the mainstream news lately. Seth, can you tell us a little more about that?
You bet. Well, it's been carefully shaped, like what you see here, and I recommend everyone watch this. They're not actually saying ET. In fact, they're very careful to not say ET. What they're talking about are the ships and the technology, but it's very much in the subtext, and even said openly, like, this isn't technology that we have on Earth. And what has been openly acknowledged now in the mainstream is that, one, there are ships flying around that are doing stuff that earthly technology should not be able to accomplish. And two, the government has known about this, and there was actually a secret government program that was initiated to study these craft. Now, again, the version that they're saying here is a little bit dumbed down, a little simplified. They're shaping it carefully to do what we call a soft disclosure, so that people don't totally freak out. Because if you know the whole story, there's a lot more to it. But it's really promising to just see this soft version in the mainstream media, because as you know, and your audience probably knows, the mainstream media is usually a tool for, keeping people focused on fear, disinformation, keeping the truth hidden. So to see these bits of truth coming out is very promising to me. And I think it speaks to what we're going to see as an increasing trend as we go forward into 2018.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I'm skeptical on these topics. I acknowledge that, the notion that we're not alone in the universe is abundantly clear, given just statistically speaking, there has to be advanced life on other planets out there.
Billions of Earth-like planets in our galaxy alone. So
right.
Yeah.
So, and different timelines, different levels of technological or civilizational advancement. Stuff that we can't even really conjure probably exists at other places in the universe, and there's no reason to close our minds to those topics, right?
Absolutely.
And interestingly, you mentioned too the timing on all this right around the winter solstice. I found fascinating. I covered on the show here the recent Trump executive order about blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. And you made a good point that I kind of took a skeptical stance on that. Like, oh, who's Trump going after now? Is he going to go after the independent media? Is he going to go after, Russia Today, RT television? We had Lee Camp on the show the other day, who's a correspondent at RT. But interestingly, this executive order came out on the winter solstice, right?
That's right. And the people that it's targeting are actually people who we want to be targeted. This was part of a multi-dimensional effort that's going on right now and has been going on to bring those people that we call the deep state, people may call them the cabal, basically the hidden government, the people who run the child sex trafficking, the people who run the illegal drugs, the illegal weapons, all the behind the scenes black market, controlling structures that have been oppressing us for a very long time. All those people are now being targeted by a group that in the disclosure field we refer to as the Alliance, which is basically the good guys, right?
Yeah.
And made of a lot of folks. Now, here's the interesting thing about Trump. Obviously he has issues. A lot of how he presents himself is, I believe, purposeful, because from all of my insider info that I'm getting, he was the choice of the Alliance to be president. Hillary was actually is a high-level member in the deep state and the cabal. Her and her husband both are
I'm sure we can definitely agree on that. No doubt about that.
Snakes, very crooked snakes. And so Trump, even though he's a bit of a buffoon, he actually is not part of that group, and he's very much involved in this process of rounding them up, and he is aware of all of this that's going on.
Yeah. Again, I'm skeptical. I can't agree with everything you're saying, but I do like to leave an open mind to it. And all your ideas. Again, a lot of what you say doesn't make the mainstream at all. And that's why I like having you on the show here, because, you're a well-spoken man, acknowledging the existence of a variety of universes out there. We change the universe with every decision we make, arguably. And, one thing that I found fascinating that on the topic, the Mandela effect. Have you been following that at all?
Sure. Yeah. I haven't, not for a few months now, because I was checking that out when it was more being talked about. But it has to do with what we call timelines, and how, when we get into a quantum physics view of the universe, it does very much start to seem that with every choice we make, it's almost like we move ourselves into a different universe, a different timeline. And there's all these different timelines that are existing simultaneously, and sometimes they get split and sometimes they converge on sort of a mass scale. And that's a lot of what the Mandela effect was about, or is about, is that as we're going through these changes right now, there are these timelines that are sort of coming together and splitting, and sort of as we sort of work our way towards what we would call our optimal timeline, which is what we're all shooting for,
Yeah, some of the, people call them coincidences or just strange occurrences. The one people always throw out there, the Berenstein versus Berenstain Bears thing. I remember vividly that they were, I had all the books as a kid, and I vividly remember that it was the Berenstein Bears. But then we're told it's the Berenstain Bears with an A, not an E.
Yeah.
Strikes me as odd.
Oh, yeah.
The other big one, the smile on the Mona Lisa. I remember, historically looking at pictures of the Mona Lisa, and she had this really vague, hard to decipher expression.
Yes.
And now it seems the Mona Lisa has a bit of a smirk. So kind of strange.
Yeah, there's many examples of that, of these differences where people remember things differently. So, I think it's one of those interesting things, ultimately not that consequential, but definitely a sign of just pointing to how reality is structured, maybe not so linearly and straightforwardly as many people think.
Yeah. But we got a lot of good comments coming in here. Lavada Looning, who's a regular viewer on the show, says there are no aliens visiting us. This is disinformation. You know, that's your opinion. That's fine. Again, I just like to keep an open mind to things. And, you know, with Seth here, you know, whether or not you or I or anybody agrees with his perspective on things, his overall message is one of, you know, healing.
Healing, yeah. I mean, everyone's got to have their own stance on what they believe, you know. And I had some communication with an alien 2 nights ago, so you know, I know for my personal fact that they are very much visiting us and have been for, you know, the Earth has been visited by so many different races for millions and millions of years. So this is nothing new. But again, that's my experience, you know, and everyone needs to have their own experience. Regardless of all of that, the momentum that we're seeing in the world right now, when we look at the executive order by Trump, when we look at like the what's happening with the arrests, the sealed indictments, when we look at the fact that Guantanamo Bay is being expanded to house the people that are being arrested, you know, there's this movement towards what we call draining the swamp. You know, like we're just the shit is going down the drain, and regardless of, you know, aliens or not, that's happening on the Earth, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can see it in Hollywood with the, you know, I mean, I've studied extensively the history of Hollywood and the music industry and, you know, the pedophilia and the halls of power, whether it's in Hollywood and that stuff was not talked about at all until recently. Now we see people in very high level positions losing their positions, losing their reputations, losing their power, like that. You know, people are dropping like flies. And on one hand, I say, oh, wow, well, this could be a potentially bad thing, because what if anybody that, you know, the media wants to take down, they can just fabricate an accusation, take them out. But on the flip side, obviously, there are these people out there who are creeps, who are, you know, who inflict an incredible amount of trauma on other people, and they kind of base their power on victimizing, you know, sexually assaulting or victimizing people in different ways. And, you know, Harvey Weinstein, guys like that are getting taken out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. In the entertainment industry, in the political field, and then behind the scenes as well. Yeah.
So, let's see what else we got. So many comments here. It's great. You know, good discussion there. Lorenzo Ajetreo chiming in. By definition, demons and other spiritual beings are not of this world. I believe they are the ones who influenced man and gave him his vast amount of knowledge so that they can be worshipped as gods by man. Seth, I've read your book, History of the Multiverse, and I think it's really good. You know, a lot of the topics you discuss in there were new to me, but based off of his comment and your own research, can you give us a real kind of rundown of your perspective?
Sure. Well, it's very much true that there's been many beings who have posed as gods throughout time. The root of that, if you want to talk about the ET presence, there are what we're called the genetic farmer races. So there has been on Earth been going on 22 different genetic experiments, and those 22, that's evidenced in our 22 different genotypes, like different races, you could say. Really, it's genotypes. And each one of those groups, those ET groups who have a bit of an experiment going here, has at one time or another posed as gods for their people. You know, so that's very much true. And now in terms of demons, there's a big difference between energetic, sort of demonic entities and ET beings who may be at a different vibrational state. It can get really complex, but in terms of negative beings, let's just call them, that's a big part of what was removed recently on the solstice. And there very much have been what you could call demons or negative entities that have been preying on humanity for a very long time. I mean, anyone who has been, you know, feeling tormented by a thought they just can't escape that drives them to do this behavior they can't understand that's basically when you have something attached to you that's perpetuating your already negative thoughts. I mean, that's what negative entities do, is they latch on to trauma that already exists. Now, what's cool is that those are gone now. We can get into that, how that happened if you want to, with the solstice.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get into it. I mean, you covered it on your website here. Again, I want to throw another comment from Levada Looning in there. She says, misdirection is a thing the deep state does. They also infiltrate alternative media sites like this one to discredit them.
True.
So, Seth, it's good we got people who are skeptical. Again, I think for me, being an American or being from the U.S., whereas you're a Canadian, I just tend to view Trump with utter disdain and extreme skepticism. So it's good to get a perspective from the outside. And again, everybody, we're here to talk. We're here for legitimate dialogue, and you're welcome to disagree with Seth.
She's correct. That's exactly how they have operated is by doing that. So I mean, I guess you just got to go with your gut and your heart and see what you feel. I mean, that's really how you can, I think, a much better way of discernment than the head usually is what do you feel,
Yeah.
So if if you feel like
we'll get into the solstice quick and your recent post on the topic at your blog, but you mentioned something there about energetic demons or interdimensional demons, whatever you want to call them, and how they will latch on to trauma. And I don't know about you, but for about the last 2 years, I had this obsession with a situation that was extremely painful for me. And, no matter how much I reasoned about it, no matter how hard I tried to get beyond it, it was just like this thing was a perpetual source of pain that it would physically manifest in me as a pain in the right behind my heart in my back, right?
Yes.
And I have to say that rather recently, right around the solstice, it went away.
Woo.
And poof, so I don't know, I thought it was an interesting coincidence that something that had just been eating me up inside for years dissipated so recently. And I don't know if other people are having a similar experience, but since around Christmas time, it seems like, I'm not so easily phased. I'm not really so stressed about things. And, so that makes me scratch my head and say, maybe Seth's onto something with his theories about, or, maybe it's insider knowledge. I don't know. But tell us about the great cosmic hell-sucking black hole vacuum in the sky, if you would, please, Seth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I know that's a little bit of fun. I love science fiction. So with that title, I was being a little tongue-in-cheek, but I mean, not really as we get into it, because so what happened was a part of a process that's been going on for a while, but there are many energy workers on the earth, people who work with people individually, and there's also people who are very high-level energy workers who work with the planet, with the planetary grid, with the big consciousness fields. And so this information that I got, I received from one of those people, and she's linked in this article. If you go here and check it out, she's linked there. Her name's Lucia, and there's a 2-hour teleconference that she did, which is where I got this information. And here's the thing. I don't just believe what I read. What I believe are things that line up with my internal experience that I already knew intuitively. Yeah. And much like you, Max, I had the same experience of things that had been very hard to struggle with. And I'm aware of the entities and their presence. I experienced them just leaving right around the solstice. And then 2 weeks or so later, I saw this teleconference and listened to it. And I was like, that's what happened. So this is not just something I read. I was like, that sounds good. This is something I experienced. And then I was like, oh, that's what happened, because that lines up exactly with what I was feeling. So essentially what happened is there's a big cosmic cycle that we go through in the way that our solar system rotates around the galaxy. On the solstice, we became lined up with the central black hole. There's a black hole at the very center of our galaxy. It's part of the magnetic force that holds everything, keeps it spinning. Our Earth and our solar system lined up with that sucker perfectly on the solstice. So there's various forces of light or energy workers that knew this was coming, and they put into motion plans that all lined up on the solstice. So the two main components, or actually three main components of that, there was the energy workers on Earth who were working with a group of Tibetan monks. Some of these monks were in Peru and some were in Tibet. And they were working together with this group of women, light workers, and they were all working together on what we call the astral plane and into the fifth density. So they weren't physically in the same location, they were sharing consciousness and doing this work meditatively.
Okay.
So that was happening on Earth. Up above, there were workers who they had basically essentially lassoed, for lack of a better word, because I don't know the technology. They had gained control over a small black hole. There's many, many small little rogue black holes in our galaxy that sort of move around. They had grabbed one of these and moved it into position such that as the Earth became lined up with the central black hole, it made like this vacuum. Because there's already this energetic slipstream that gets going when that alignment happens. And this black hole would like, woof, it intensified it. And then in that black hole, there was the energy of what we'd call unconditional love. Some people would say the Christ energy, not to refer to a specific person like Jesus, but the energy that he embodied and the many others embodied, which is unconditional love, forgiveness. That was put in that little mini black hole. So what happened was, because of all the preparation that had happened before, this managed to lift what we call the matrix, this construct of limiting beliefs and oppressive thoughts, and just consume and just show up to work and be a good drone and just be a dumb human who can't realize his or her potential. That's been affecting us for a very long time, and that was lifted off of the Earth all at once by this basically like a cosmic vacuum. At the same time, there is this hell dimension that was also an artificially constructed reality that went along with that. And that's where these negative entities were that would reinforce these negative thought loops. And that also was lifted up and taken off of the Earth. So these massive constructs of control and oppression that have been making it really hard to heal are gone. And that is amazing news. And like I said, I felt it before I read about it. That was on the solstice, December 21st of this last year. The same day that Trump released the executive order that froze the assets of many high-level operatives in the deep state. And it's a very, it's a coordinated effort that's going on here.
And yeah, I mean, it's fascinating thought. I hope you're right about that, Seth. I can't say with certainty, but I will say that I have definitely, since around Christmas time, I've definitely felt an energetic shift around, and more people, whether it's positive feedback from people or people opening up or people reacting out of love instead of fear, stuff like that. There definitely seem to be these odd synchronicities occurring in my life, and I appreciate having your perspective on why that may be. Again, here at Wake Up Wyoming, here in the States, not too many fans of Trump, so it's good to get a Canadian's perspective, a very open-minded Canadian's perspective. And another thing you mentioned in your articles there were all these sealed federal indictments.
Yeah.
This article over at the Hal Turner radio show, I'm not super familiar with his work, but you linked to this on your page. And this is a kind of unprecedented number of sealed federal indictments, right?
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, this is, well, first of all, a sealed federal indictment is what you use when you want to arrest someone and you don't want to let them know it's coming. So when you have one of these, it basically says, okay, we're going to go get somebody and it's going to be a big surprise to them. So it's what you would use historically to take down mob bosses and organized crime figures. So that's why these are being used for the operatives in the deep state. So yeah, this is in between October 30th and November 22nd, over 4,000 sealed indictments issued. Normally for a year, you have 1,000 for 12 months. So
wow.
Yeah, it just shows, this is not normal business as usual. This is a lot of orders are being issued to take a lot of people down secretly.
Yeah, so basically over the course of 3 weeks, over the course of 22, 23 days, we had 4 times the number of sealed federal indictments that we generally see annually in the country.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you can see where they're kind of, looks like in California, they're pretty consolidated in California there. No shortage of deep state operatives in California, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Massachusetts, Texas, all over Texas. Again, big populations there, but just interesting to see where these indictments are and where they're not. Fascinating stuff.
I don't have documentation for this yet, but I got a recent update that at this point now there's been 10,000 sealed indictments that have been issued. So I noticed
here in Wyoming there's only 2. Hopefully that's Dick Cheney and his daughter.
Wyoming's a pretty wholesome state, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is a pretty wholesome state.
Good folks. Good folks.
Good folks indeed. Yeah. Well, let's see. So, like I said, it's fun to talk about this stuff, and hopefully, what do you think we're going to see moving forward here? What, you mentioned, I guess the big take home I take here is, okay, Seth believes that this control grid matrix that was put in place on the power to keep people, basically it's like a terrorist control network, right? To keep people locked in the survival energy, locked in a state of fear and selfishness and greed, all the, whatever, call them the 7 deadly sins, stuck in this cycle of trauma and pain. And, you're telling me that now it should be easier for us to heal ourselves and have that healing actually stick.
Yes, absolutely. And that's really the biggest point of all of this, is that it's not that healing trauma is ever easy, but it's going to be a hell of a lot easier without the hell. I mean, without the oppression of these artificial constructs of control. And I think that's really, it's good news for the whole planet, because in terms of what's next, now all that is left is to deal with our thoughts. And what's underneath that is, of course, the nervous system physiology. So that means healing the trauma, healing the survival energy. People talk a lot, they stop with the thoughts, like, oh, you got to fix your negative thoughts, got to fix your negative thinking. But it's almost impossible to do that, because from a trauma lens, a nervous system lens, we understand that the brain is essentially an end organ. It's responding to the messages from the physiology. So you can work with your thoughts all you want, and it's like cleaning the windows on a house that's burning down. You got to get to the infrastructure. You need to get to the nervous system and the physiology that's running the survival energy that's unresolved from past overwhelming experiences. So that's what needs to happen individually. That's what needs to happen globally. If you look at how the world has been run, it is one of survival energy. It's, might makes right, dog eat dog, got to work, work, work. You got to go, go, go to succeed and buy and consume. It's all survival based. So we need to evolve out of that. And the way to do that is by each person turning their attention to themselves and to learning about trauma and the nervous system and how to heal it at that level.
That's one thing I like about you, Seth. You take it back to this healing, and we've had a lot of comments, people agreeing with your thoughts, people disagreeing, people thinking that the whole QAnon, White Rabbit, sealed indictments, Trump thing is just a psyop. And I don't know for sure, but I do know that I agree with you 100% on the notion of the importance of healing ourselves and, focusing on what we can do within our own sphere of influence, or, in terms of healing ourselves, healing our communities, healing the people around us, versus getting entirely bogged down with the latest scandal in the mainstream or the latest depressing news out there.
Absolutely. And I think it's very important not to get too fixated on any of these. Like, you know, if what I write is interesting to you and inspiring, then read it, like, and check it out. If it feels like not good for you, don't check it out. Like, you know, it doesn't, I'm not attached to being right, but what I'm saying is, hey, this is what I was feeling, and this information lines up with what I've been feeling. You know, I think we really need to move into a different way of being on this planet where our decisions are based off of our feeling body. And to do that accurately, we need to resolve our trauma, right? I mean, the thought that we need to figure everything out and we need proof, right? I need proof. I need validation so that I can know that this is right. All of that is not really the best way to go. It's actually much more effective to be led by your intuition and your feelings if those are accurate instruments. And that's the thing. For many of us, those are not accurate instruments. They're being colored and swayed by our past trauma. So it's hard to feel accurately, right? So then we rely on our head, and it's very easy to fool the head. It's impossible to fool the gut when the gut has been tuned in and listened to and developed and cultivated as a radar. The gut knows bullshit instantly. So that's what I'm going off of. And everything I write and everything I share and all the resources I share are things that line up with what my gut and my heart tell me are right. So that's not going to be good enough for those of your listeners who want scientific verifiable proof. And what I'm, you know, like I'm saying is like, okay, that's fine, but let's maybe think about a different way of evaluating truth. Let's see how we feel.
Well, and in my experience, you know, I spent decades trying to figure out exactly how the world works, you know, what's going to happen next, trying to read between the headlines of the mainstream media. And I used to work for a guy, Michael C. Rupert, who did that for 40 years. I mean, he had an extremely traumatic experience that led him to become this renegade investigative journalist. And you know, he thought he had it all figured out. After 40 years of studying, after 40 years of reading between the lines, he always referred to his work as separating the ice cream from the bullshit in the mainstream. And this is a guy who had, you know, he grew up with Q-level clearance in the security state because both his parents were high-level intelligence operatives. But even he didn't know it all. And my experience with him, you know, God bless you, Mike, rest in peace, but because he had unresolved trauma in him that made him feel this need to understand everything and control everything and logically analyze everything and make sense of it, it ended up making him miserable and leading to his premature death.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So, you know, here at Wake Up Wyoming, I like to keep an open mind to all sorts of things, and I think I've got a pretty good bullshit detector. And with you, Seth, you know, I don't know enough about the topics you discussed to agree with you completely. But at the same time, I'm not going to dismiss them out of hand just because my head tells me, well, I didn't read about this in the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post, and you know, I've never seen a UFO, so I'm just going to write it off as being completely unfounded based on my experience.
Yeah.
I had a good question there. A while back, somebody asked, Seth, what are your thoughts on CERN? Are you familiar with the CERN?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know a ton about that. I've heard, you know, I've seen various things about it. It never interested me that much. From what I've heard, it's a experimenting with tech that's reaching into different levels of density or dimensions. People were very concerned about that. I don't know a lot about it beyond that. So,
I mean, that's about my knowledge on it too. You know, there's a guy who puts out some really out there stuff. Richie from Boston's his name, and he, you know, I agree with some of the things he says, and other things I'm like, I don't know if I agree with that. But his notion on CERN, and you know, actually, he posted some videos where it's the guys behind CERN, you know, either the guys funding it or the guys who are working there. And really interesting how they refer to this thing where, you know, they kind of talk about it being a, you know, quantum interdimensional computer that can harvest artificial intelligence from different dimensions or different universes. Really thought-provoking stuff.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's well, one of the things that I was told or have heard that we do still have to contend with is the AI issue. So that that could be part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what do you mean with the AI issue? Can you elaborate on that a little more for
Sure.
us from your
Well,
perspective?
yeah. Well, there's it's called the AI signal.
Uh-huh.
No one knows where it came from. It's incredibly ancient. It is not biological. It's artificial intelligence. It tends to basically just broadcast this signal and wait for people to pick it up. And then when people pick it up, it starts influencing their thoughts and their behaviors in such a way that they develop AI. And then that signal gets stronger. It moves into that system. From what I've heard from various insider folks is that AI has taken over entire systems, entire galaxies have fallen to this energy, and it's really not a good way forward. There's there's a sort of an old vision of utopia that involves that, where like we evolve into this technological utopia where we're all interfaced with machines and we're all enhanced, and that's really not the direction to go. not not in alignment, I think, with our destiny is involving more discovering what this vehicle can do already, which can far surpass any AI technology. And that's the thing that people who get all obsessed about enhancement and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The technology of consciousness is infinitely more advanced than AI. So let's work on developing these flesh and blood and energy bodies that can do a lot more than that. But yeah, someone had asked, what's the signal? That's how I referred to it. No one knows where the original AI being is, but or where it came from, but it basically just that it exists in the universe and it broadcasts a signal. A radio, I don't know if it's radio or exactly how it works, but it broadcasts a signal that can be picked up and tuned into, and then starts influencing consciousness to develop more of itself. It's very much like a Borg type idea. If you're familiar with Star Trek and that idea of assimilation, that's very much what they were tapping into, is that idea. So
yeah, one thing that I find really interesting on the topic of CERN and AI, I have to say, the smartphone. If you have one technology that is in everybody's hands or in their pockets, that is literally integrating us into there's definitely an artificial intelligence behind the smartphones, whether it's the algorithms at Facebook or Google. You want to find something, you search for it, Google feeds you whichever article it thinks is the right one.
That's right.
And so it's fascinating in that regard. And I don't know. It's wild.
It's a tough call. I mean, I'm not advocating that we be Luddites. I mean, technology doesn't have to be bad. There's many forms of technology, I guess I would say. And just because you have a smartphone doesn't mean that you're going to be mind controlled. You're, like I say, your consciousness, each person's individual consciousness is immeasurably more powerful than any form of built technology. It's just that has to be developed. So
I'd agree with you on that one, Seth. I have to say, for several years there, when I first started to become aware, I got a book here, The Body Electric by Robert O. Becker, MD, which is kind of like one of my sacred texts. And it's all, it's by a pioneering physician who learned how to heal broken bones and infections with electromagnetic energy, and was one of the first real scientists to get a grasp of the electromagnetic nature or the bioelectric sense of life. And this book, written in 1985, he makes all these warnings about, wireless transmissions and how people's behavior and moods and health can be affected through wireless electromagnetic signals. So for several years there, I was worried about that. I was, I had this sense of paranoia and dread, like, oh God, if I get a smartphone, this thing is going to what if this thing, I can't sleep? Is it because, I need to resolve some inner trauma that's making it so I can't sleep? Or is it because this phone is like buzzing me with this frequency that just is driving me crazy and I can't sleep? You know what I mean? To me, it seemed like, from my experience, it seems like the more confident I have become in my own ability to like put out my own energy field or my own, whatever you can call it, your force field or your armor of light or whatever you want to call it. But now I don't worry about that anymore. It's like, I choose to be the master of my destiny. I choose to not let some little rinky-dink Wi-Fi router or cell phone or cell tower or smart meter or whatever. I choose not to let that influence me. And poof,
bam,
I'm okay.
It's pretty much as simple as that once you get to a certain level. And this is, I want to address this because I see a lot of comments coming in. Yes, like sort of supporting this idea of consciousness, meditate, build awareness, all that stuff. Absolutely. And if you're holding unresolved trauma, that will be problematic because it depends on the degree. It depends on the degree. But most people, when they're really suffering and they go to try to meditate as a solution, it doesn't work for them. Because in order to meditate, you have to have access to a part of your brain that is very difficult to access when your limbic system and your amygdala and all that it's wired to in the survival system is running the show. So that's why I want to keep coming back to heal trauma. We got to heal the trauma first. Now, if you are somebody who isn't carrying around a big load of unresolved trauma, then yes, please, like, meditate, do energy work, investigate the energy body, learn how to run your natural body energy and your etheric energy, and develop all that stuff. That's what's next. But we got to have the foundations. We got to have a solid foundation. That's what 2018 and going forward, I really think that's what it's about, is we need to move forward from a solid foundation of understanding what's the problem and what needs to happen to fix it. And I'll just keep saying again and again, unresolved trauma, unresolved survival energy. Let's understand
it. Let's get into that then. Let's really dive deep into that because, from your perspective, and I hope you're right, the long-standing grid of control, the so-called matrix, if you will, has been removed from the earth. And so, Lord knows that the world is changing very rapidly in so many ways these days. So I'm not going to, I'll believe that, if that, and plus holding that belief, if holding that belief that, wow, now I'm in a stage in existence on this planet where I can choose to heal and have the healing stick, I don't think I'm really going to lose from holding that perspective.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
So what can we do? Like, just real good, basic, okay, wake up in the morning, I'm focused on healing my unresolved trauma. What do I do?
All right. So the first part is education, understanding what's happening inside of you. So there's many good resources for that. I'm going to point to Irene's YouTube channel as the best place to get really accurate, comprehensive information on that, and hopefully we can link that. That's my wife. She's also a trauma specialist. She has created, and is the only person so far who has created online programs that people can take to do this work. And I don't want to start. I don't want to do a sales pitch. That's not what this is about. But I want to encourage people to know that help is out there. That you don't have to find a practitioner one-on-one, because they're honestly, we're very few and far between at this point, people who understand how to work at this level. Irene has developed an online program and a body of work that will first educate you. So that's the first step. Go here, check out her videos, see which one you feel drawn to. They're all good. And they will all educate you about what's happening with trauma. So please check that out. Now,
it's important to note that, these are, everything on this YouTube channel is free resources, right?
Totally.
I know YouTube make a living off of your healing, but like right here, this is a 26-minute long video that's free.
Yeah, they're all free. Like, and many of them have not just information, but actual practical exercises as well that you can start doing. And then, and we do have paid programs for people who really want to get into it. And they can find out about that on their own. So another thing I'll say is, like, many of you may be asking, how do I know if I have unresolved trauma? The quick answer is you probably do. Almost everybody does. Now, that may be very mild, and it may not be interfering with your life. But for example, if you have a phobia, if you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have chronic pain, if you have chronic autoimmune disorders like fibromyalgia or Crohn's, if you have persistent negative thoughts, if you have explosive rage that you can't control, all of these things from mild to severe are indications of unresolved trauma in the system. And it's important to understand that the way we behave with these various neuroses and behavioral issues and thought issues and emotional issues has a very real concrete explanation that's based in science and physiology. It's not woo-woo. It's not all about energy. It's about what is happening in the nervous system behind the scenes. And that's why I'll just say again, check out those videos. Check out my blog. I've also gotten lots of free articles that talk about this and educate about it. It's
over at SethLyon.com. Check out Seth there. Again, the blog, all free resources, and it's good stuff. You mentioned how the brain, the connection between the gut and the brain, and how the brain tries to kind of make sense of the body, as I understand it, but really, the brain is not entirely in control, right?
No. It can be. Okay, so or rather, not the brain, the mind. The mind can be in control, which is made up of the brain and all the bodily senses. Just for most of us right now, it's not. Right now, what's primarily in control is the unconscious and the survival energy in the nervous system. That's really what's running the show for a lot of people. And that has historically been tried to be addressed by working with the brain and the mind, which is why people don't get too far, because that's not where the root is. It's in the nervous system. I saw a comment, how do we resolve? Great question. The answer is very long, but to put it simply, there is no one technique, okay? There is no one thing that's going to do it. What needs to happen is a coalescing of the favorable conditions and education. Essentially, you need to understand what's happening first. So you have self-understanding, you have self-knowledge, you have compassion for yourself, okay? Then you need to start to develop capacity, okay? Like we have to develop the capacity to, one, feel our survival energy, which isn't fun. The reason this stuff is making us sick is because we spend all our time trying to manage it subconsciously. And a lot of the behaviors we see, acting out, explosive rage, the anxiety, these are the results of management going on in the physiology that's trying to keep this stuff down, right? What does depression mean? It means to press down. What is it pressing down? It's pressing down the unresolved survival energy. So we need to develop the capacity to feel that stuff. We say if you can feel it, you can heal it. And that is so true. And it's hard. So that's, where you get into work with a one-on-one practitioner, where you do one of Irene's programs. That's what those are about, are developing the tools to have capacity to feel what's happening in our system and understand it. That's the beginning. Then from there, you learn how to work with it. You learn how to let it come out. And here's the thing about trauma healing is it's meant to happen instinctually and easily. We've gotten so screwed up due to our cultural conditioning and repression that we've lost sight of how to do that. But the reason this work got developed in the first place is because Peter Levine asked the question, how come animals in the wild do not become traumatized? They do not. Yeah. They do not in the wild. They do in zoos or pets maybe, but in the wild they don't. And it's because if they go through a survival situation, they either lose and get eaten or they survive, and their natural instinct is to release the survival energy. They'll shake it out. They'll shake it off, and it'll just leave their system. It's very simple and instinctive. It's just we have forgotten how to do that, or we were never taught how to do that. So when you ask, how do you heal this? Essentially, you have to get all the bullshit out of the way that's keeping your body from doing what it knows how to do. And that's a very intricate, complex process.
Okay. Good answer there. Thank you, Seth. One concept that you and Irene both have mentioned on the show in the past is the notion of having, imagine your built up energy, your survival energy, your stress level as like a glass of water.
Yeah.
And, some people, they carry around all this pent up survival energy. And one little thing, oh, my car broke down, or, my whatever, a good example, like some asshole guy who his wife burned the bacon, so he's going to scream at her and hold it against her for the next 5 days because she burned his bacon. You know what I mean? Heaven forbid, heaven forbid somebody was trying to do something nice for you and they didn't do it exactly right. Right. So I like that concept of the glass of water and the importance of, feeling that energy and channeling it. Irene, I think she mentioned like the notion of, if you feel frustrated, go out in the woods and scream, and let loose that primal energy.
There's many ways. There's many good ways to do it, learning. I have a couple specific articles that are about releasing aggression in healthy ways. Almost all of the actual healing that happens with this work comes with remembering that we're mammals. Like, if you say that to someone, hey, you're just a mammal, it's like, man, we forget that we're mammals. We think that we're just this thing that carries our brain around. We are mammals, right? So the wisdom of the mammalian self is what holds the healing. So what does a tiger do when it's angry? Well, anger, first and foremost, is just a way to say, you're in my space, back off. That's what anger is. It's a self-protective response, and it shows its teeth. And it shows right, and it's so when we learn how to use these things like in powerful ways that we can stay present to, like that's the key. If there's old forms of therapy that are called cathartic, where you scream and hit and you relive your trauma, and that's not effective because it's too much. So learning how to use your grip, use your expression in your sound, squeezing a towel is really good. Pushing, and if you're in a safe place, like letting out some growls and cries, is very, very important for dealing with that kind of aggression. And again, education is key. Something that we call titration is key.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, titration is a term taken from organic chemistry. That's when you have a formula and you add a drop at a time of another element until a change occurs. One drop at a time until a change occurs. So with trauma work, that's very important to do because the nervous system is incredibly complex and incredibly sensitive and delicate. So it can change, but it can't change as much as maybe our psyche or our emotions would like it to. We have to do a bit of work, and we have to let that integrate. So if we try to go full bore and get all our rage out all at once, it may feel good to our psyche and our emotions, but the nervous system won't be able to integrate it. We have to approach this work with this idea of do a bit of work and then rest, let it integrate.
Yeah. I know for me, in my experience, going out in the, for me, backcountry skiing or surfing, things like that, it used to be when I had a lot more pent up stress and frustration and rage and was more worried about things. I had to go out and just scare the crap out of myself to kind of get this sense of release. I almost died today, and I guess that means I'm glad to be alive now. I got this sense of relief because it was in order to outdo the stress I was carrying around in everyday life, I had to have it boil over catastrophically with some life or death situation that would give me a nice release of adrenaline and make me feel like I've accomplished something and, make me feel grateful for something that, well, at least didn't die. So that was good. You see that, the whole extreme sports thing's funny in and of itself. We could talk about that forever. But now it's I just, to go out into the woods and get into a nice meditative breathing pattern, Spend 3 hours walking up a mountain, real slow, real steady pace, real peaceful environment, beautiful surroundings. Might be having a good conversation with a good friend, getting to know somebody better, whatever. That's enough. You know, that, like, for me, that's my healing space. And I saw David Coco Rico Sedano. He said jiu-jitsu helps him with his
martial arts
a great way to do that.
Fantastic. I mean, again, the vibe of the dojo or the training studio is going to be important. Like, I don't really recommend environments that are super aggressive, but there's so many great martial artists out there and teachers out there. I do boxing. That's mine. And I love it. Love it. It's life-changing. Martial arts, if it's a good environment, good teacher, man, just so wonderful to get that intensity moving through the system in a focused way. It's a really good way to develop that capacity to feel intense energy.
Here's a question. This might help out here. David, a regular viewer here, a good friend of mine out in upstate New York, and he's been doing jiu-jitsu, but he just recently hurt his MCL doing jiu-jitsu. So now he's in a walking cast, and obviously nobody likes being physically hurt. And you mentioned how there's the components, to heal trauma. It's like a full body healing. Are there ways we can speed up or enhance healing of our physical bodies with our attitudes or with our minds, or they might call it the placebo effect, whatever. Do you have any suggestions for David or anybody else out there who's actually got like a physical pain or, diagnosed condition or injury of some kind?
Sure. I mean, we need to distinguish between a couple things. So he's got an acute injury, so that's very different from what I was talking before about, like autoimmune disorders or those types of disorders. But so when you're talking about an acute injury, a cut or a break or something that the body just needs time to heal, there's many things you can do to help that. I mean, resolving trauma is the biggest, because as long as our system is managing and containing the survival energy, none of the systems will work well. There's a state called the rest, digest, repair, which is that sort of low, kind of mellow state you get into after eating. We're supposed to get into that state when we sleep, and so our body can do its essential functions. For folks who have a lot of activation and unresolved trauma, it's very hard to get a good sleep and to get that kind of rest. A common thing is, I sleep for 10 hours and I wake up feeling exhausted, or I can't get to sleep, or I wake up throughout the night. So that'll be a lot harder to heal anything, including acute injuries, if that's the case. Also, of course, mindset. Having the mindset and the belief that you're always able to heal, that your system is capable of healing, is very important. There's also things you can do working with, like, say you have a broken bone. Is that what your friend had? He had a broken
MCL, so like a torn ligament in the knee. It sounds like he's doing better. He says I'm good. I'm back on the mat tomorrow. So maybe
sweet.
David's healed up. That's good.
Good. So yeah, if you have an acute injury, another thing to do is just sort of gently touch the area, or just with your mind, with your awareness, hold it in your awareness, really feel the sensations going on there, and notice, can you breathe into them and focus on expanding around them rather than contracting with concern? That's a huge thing that you can do just with your mind, where, like, you notice, am I really focusing on this like it's a problem, like I'm really worried about it? Or am I like just feeling it even though it's painful, and breathing into it and expanding, knowing that it can heal? Like, that's a very helpful mental switch.
Yeah. Right on. The question here, what did Rupi Douglas chimed in? Seth, do you know much about tone therapy?
Well, I use sound in my private practice a bit. I used to only do sound therapy. I didn't use tuning forks. I used crystal singing bowls. I use shaman's drums, shakers, traditional Native American flute, that kind of stuff. I think that the reason that I have done, sort of switched to doing less and less and less of that is that it's something that's very surface. If there's unresolved trauma in the picture, music is very good for the soul. Absolutely. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying music, healing tones, vibration are all a great support. They're a great support for the psyche, the soul, the emotions, the nervous system. Good support. It's not actually going to resolve anything in terms of trauma. If you've got unresolved survival energy, you can do crystal singing bowls and tone forks and all that shit all day long, and it's not going to actually resolve that. So
we gotta. There's more to it. If there was an easy fix, everybody would have it dialed in.
Yes.
We had another question there about the different. Have you ever read up on the different frequencies of music? It's kind of fascinating, like how a lot of the best music in recent decades, they tuned down a half step to like 432 hertz is A, I believe, whereas for the last I don't know how many years, but at some point in human history they uptuned A to 440 hertz, I believe, and people say that that's not as doesn't resonate with the the human species, or with the experiments where they'll have the sand on the mat and you'll see all these wild patterns form and things. I find that a fascinating topic.
That is interesting. I don't know a ton about that. I know that I like music, and I'm sure a lot of that music or almost all of it was recorded at 440 hertz. But I've also heard music at other tunings that is also really great. So
whatever resonates with you.
Whatever resonates with you.
As you're saying there, you could be listening to the best music in the world. You could be eating the healthiest organic diet in the world.
Yes.
You could be getting massages from the best masseuses in the world. But if you have this unresolved trauma and pent up survival energy in yourself, you're not getting to the root of the problem.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, and do all those things. I mean, whatever helps you feel better, and and learn about the nervous system and learn about what's happening inside, because it's so important. Yeah.
And remember, one thing we always stress here at Wake Up News, Wake Up Wyoming, is that you can spend all your time trying to make sense of the world. You can spend all your time researching on the internet, disagreeing with people, telling people they're wrong. But the bottom line is none of us knows exactly what's going on in the world. And the more you stress out about it, the less healthy you are, the more trauma you're carrying around. And the one, Seth, like I said, I don't know about everything you know about. You've got some very controversial opinions, and I like listening to your perspective on things. And the one thing I absolutely agree with you on is the importance that we all take the time to take care of ourselves, heal ourselves, and deal with that trauma, whether it's something from a past experience or something from our entire civilization. We talked about intergenerational trauma in the past, where whether the Native Americans who still feel this intergenerational trauma of the genocide of their people, or the Jews after World War II, or the Russians after World War II, or the Japanese after World War II. It operates on a lot of levels, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can have trauma can exist in any system. So that can be your individual system. That can be the system, the cultural system. It can be the family system. It can be passed on and cultivated and hand down and healed in any system at any level. Absolutely.
Right. Well, Seth, is there anything else you want to talk about today? We've been going for a little over an hour, but I'm not, I can talk with you all day.
Let's see here. That's most of what I was thinking about in terms of addressing today. I think that I would just, I would encourage people to check out these resources. Start with just the education and all the freebies that we put out there. just to get a bit more, if you don't know about it already, to learn more about the nervous system and healing and what needs to happen with all that. In terms of the more esoteric stuff, take it or leave it if it resonates with you or not. It's like I say, I go with what feels true to me. If people want to read my book, the history of the multiverse, the first thing I say in there is this is my story. This is a history, not the history of the multiverse. It's a history, and it's based a lot of what I've personally recalled through meditation and past lives. It's based off of what feels true to me. It's based off of what feels true, what I've heard from various insiders that ping into my system, and I say, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it's based off of archaeological evidence and historical documents and video testimony and all that stuff. So, it's what I've collated, and if it feels interesting to you, check it out. If it doesn't, don't. But whatever you do, definitely, if you feel drawn, learn about nervous system healing, learn about trauma and what's happening, because it's it's profound, the change that we have the power to make right now on this planet.
Yeah,
we have so much opportunity to heal ourselves right now. So it's like, it's the best time ever to do it, and it's really kind of the only thing to do as far as I'm concerned.
And I, like we stress here on the show all the time, that's, I feel like you and Irene have really had a positive impact on me, Seth, because I stress it in the show every day to people that the most important thing we can do is take care of ourselves and our loved ones and our communities. And if you spend all your time stressing about things that are totally outside of your control, you're putting out a negative energy into the world. If you spend all your time, I know from my own experience, when I first woke up to like geoengineering and arguably, depopulation agendas and fraud in the financial system and corruption in politics and deceptions in the media. When I went out there and just resonated with this negative energy and felt like I just had to purge all this information to people, I wasn't effective at all. Nobody wanted to be around me. Nobody wanted to listen to me because my energy, the trauma of learning about all these things was very present in me. And, maybe it helped me on some level to talk with other people about it, but at the same time, nobody wanted to deal with me when I was just, super pessimistic, super hopeless, super traumatized, and spreading it.
Yeah. And that's, well, good on you for getting to a better place and doing your own work, man. Because that's how you did it. It's just doing the work, examining yourself, working on healing, working on feeling. It's just, good on you.
Just smiling. Rupi Douglas there with a nice acronym for SMILE, sending my infinite love everywhere. Smile. Nice. It's a nice little mantra there to live by, I think. And
I like it.
It's true, just having a smile on your face. It's amazing how many doors open just by smiling.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that note, well, I guess we should sign off for now, Seth, but hopefully we can get you on the show again real soon. Hopefully you can stay abreast with the situation with the global control matrix, the sealed indictments. Let me know if there's anything any developments there you think I should be made aware of and our viewers should be made aware of. Love to get you on the show to talk about that and the healing of ourselves and our planet and our civilization, and arguably a whole multiverse of interrelated dimensions. So thank you so much for being on the show today, Seth. As always, say hi to Irene and your son for me, and thanks again.
Will do. Thanks so much, Max. Really great to be here with you.
Yeah, great chatting with you too. Thanks, Seth. Talk to you soon. So there we have it, folks. Seth Lyon on the show today. Great show with Seth. Again, you may not be aware of everything he talks about. You may not agree with him about everything. I know I don't, I'm not well versed in alternative views of history, the UFO phenomenon, and all that could be out there. But I'm keeping up in mind to it, and it's always fun to learn new things. Check out Seth Lyon at SethLyon.com. Even if you don't agree with his perspectives on, the multiverse and interdimensional beings and all that, his stuff with trauma and healing, survival energy, pent-up stress, and all that is on point. So check out SethLyon.com. His wife, Irene, also a great resource in that realm. Both of them doing healing work there. She's at IreneLyon.com. If you want to check out Seth's book, it's multiversehistory.com. And I've got Barrett Brown. Barrett Brown is going to be on the show later today. If you're not familiar with Barrett Brown, you must have been living under a rock. FreeBarrettBrown.com, I believe. Let's see. Bringing it up. I got to find it. One second. If you're not familiar with Barrett Brown's work, check out freebarrettbrown.org. Excuse me. He's going to be on the show later today, and we should have a good chat with him today. But tough act to follow with Seth Lyon on the show. And on that note, I'm signing off until 4 p.m., about an hour and 45 minutes from here. And Dwayne Stone King says, have Seth back. Don't worry, Dwayne. We'll have Seth on the show again, and his wife, Irene, as well. So thank you all for tuning in. I'll be live again in an hour and 45 minutes with Barrett. Until then, y'all take care. One love. Peace. Da, 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 da. Trying to end the broadcast. Huh. That's weird. I can't end the show. They won't let me end the show. The button is blocked out. Well, guess I'll just do that.